Welcome, everybody, to my video series on styles of comic book coloring. My name is Mike, and today we're going to cover cell shading, or toon shading as some people call it. Cell shading is interesting because it's most often connected with animation. And the reason that you see much more interesting styles of rendering in animation in movies rather than weekly shows, it's just a time thing. It's much faster and easier to render a series of images with big blocks of shadow than it is and only have animation, depending on the animation, like say the Batman cartoon, for example, pretty popular example. It really just has one, you have your base tone, which would be whatever, like his orange here, and then there's a shadow, and then there's a highlight. There's just three colors in most of it. Today we're going to go just slightly more than that. We're going to use the base tones that are here in the flats. I've got the shadow layer set to multiply, a halftone, and a highlight. Now these aren't really, the halftone isn't really the halftone. And when I mean I'm not sure if everyone is familiar. So in color theory, or when we're talking about the physics of light, you'll often see the ball thing. I don't know what else to call it. It's a ball thing. So here we've got a ball, right? I'm going to take an airbrush and grab this color. Now the highlight is going to be, we have the light coming from over here. The highlight is going to be, you may have seen this before, the brightest area. So in the center here. And remember, there's a million little gradients in between. Now, in the book that I learned drawing from, now if you went to art school, your ball may have had different levels. I've seen it with 4 levels. I learned 5 levels. Which is, and this is, I kind of think in 5 levels: highlight, quarter tone, halftone, base tone, the reflected light or the rim light, and then the cast shadow. But we can go as far as 7. So if we want to do this in 7 levels, we can call this the light, and then we can go halftone. And then the next level would be shadow core, which is kind of right there. And then there's the shadow, right there. And then you have your reflected light, which is kind of right there. And then you have your rim, or not your rim light, but your accent, like that. And then, of course, you have your cast shadow, which is super dark and would kind of look like this. But however you you can break this up in as many as you want. So today, what we're working with is, let me get a pen here. So we're going to work with the highlight, something in this area, which is our base tone, which is where our flats are. We've got a shadow layer. You can look at that however you want. And then we kind of have something in between here. Something that's not quite the highlight and not quite the shadow. So that's how I'm looking at it. See, there's a lot that we're missing here, but we could still create something convincing. Now, just like if you go back to my first video when I talk about the elements of style, the elements of comic book style or rendering style, I talk about how level of detail is really important. Because with these overlay layers, you can certainly you can color him as detailed as you want. Anything you could do with a really blended painter style or a brushy style, you can do all of those things because your brushes that you're using don't matter. This style is most closely associated with like a big G pen, something like, whoa, that is black. Something like this, okay? Now, I've picked out a couple colors here. I don't know if I'm going to use those. Let's talk about color selection. So, when you have a layer set to multiply, which it's very common to use that for a shadow, right? You're going to want to use a fairly light color. Dark colors get very, very dark very quickly. Because remember, with multiply, the closer to white it is, the closer to transparent it is. So it's hard to think about exactly what color you're going to be getting. It's easier just to grab a color and smear it on the canvas. That's what I would do. That's what I do. Light pinks, light purples. I'm moving all the way into kind of somewhere between purple and red, a tertiary color here, meaning a combination of three different colors. Sort of the third level of colors, an odd color. And if we kind of smear this everywhere, now notice that it is almost to just value, to just, black and white, but it's got a little bit of color in it. And that's how I like to pick my my colors for multiply. I like just a little bit of color in there, because what happens is if you have it too saturated, even midway saturation, you're going to see a lot of that color come through. And that may be what you want. It's very useful to go saturated and use a multiply mode when you have a very stylized scene, like a flashback with an overlay, or you think of like a desert, like a yellow, orange, brown desert scene, with the plateaus and everything's kind of the same color, and it all, you create this really nice unified look to a page. And sometimes going in and getting a very saturated one of those colors and tying those into the shadows too makes for a very pleasing unified image. So I think that this looks, whoa, that's not what I wanted. I tried to pick the right color. Let's see. That's not it. All right. That's what I like. Now all these layers are clipped to the layer below, to these flats. So that's what we have here on Rocket Colors. We have just his flats, and then we're going to merge all this down just like we did with Black Cat yesterday, so that I have a layer of colors for every character, because we're going to be chopping out the inks at the end and finishing these images. And that will be a totally separate video at the end. We'll do the backgrounds, and then we'll do the images. That's why I'm calling this 20 parts, even though there's only 17 characters. So we're going to have a video for a different comic book style for all 17 of these characters. So we have Black Cat done here in just a old school airbrush style. If you want to see that video, you can. It's on the playlist, and that's what we did yesterday. And I guess the tentacle is going to be the 17th image. And I'll probably do a video on this, just on rendering metals, different types of metals. We'll do it gold, we'll do it silver, we'll do it whatever. And then we'll do the backgrounds and the finishing layer. So that's the plan. I don't have all the styles worked out yet, but the first 5 should be very common and be fairly easy. So let's get started here. First, we're going to start with our shadows. We have light sort of coming in from the left. Give me just a second here to get set up. And I'm just going to use the lasso tool for now and see how this looks, to just kind of block in these shadows with this. We'll just use the silhouette instead of, make this real simple. As simple as we can. I'm gonna do, his arm is gonna cast a bit of a shadow. See how that looks. All right. The shadow look on there. Flat on that glove is a little bit darker than I think I wanted. I think I'm going to brighten that up just a little bit. Isn't that working? Oh, I'm on the flats layer. My bad. Alright. Alright, let's see how that looks. And we may, I mean, it's okay to change this, to change the color. I'm just trying to use one color for the sake of simplicity. I think this should probably all be in shadow. It's one of those things that because this is so sparse, it's very easy to mess up. Like that. Yeah. an awfully big brush to be doing freehand. Did you turn your size jitter down, bro? Because I'm stupid? Derp. Ooh, stray pixels. Fix that. Now, look, I didn't flat this out. Oh, there's some more. There's bound to be flatting errors, even with the best of flatters, because you're kind of asking someone to do something that's completely tedious and very easy to mess up 1 or 2 stray pixels. But the way that worked is I grabbed this color because I'm on the flat layer and I had already painted over it on the shadow layer. That pixel was actually empty. It was deleted. So there was nothing for it to multiply over. So that's why I used this color and not that. So I fixed the flat, I didn't just paint in with another color. Now where were we? What is going on? Oh. Duh. No, that's not it either. That one. Oh. Another very important thing is that if you are going to use these overlay layers, you're going to be constantly changing the mode back to normal and then color picking, because you can't color pick this color. See, that's what happens. So I would highly suggest just creating a new palette I just created a palette that I'm only going to use for this, and then I'll just delete it. And then that will make life much easier for you. And I'm not big on palettes. If I'm working on pages, I'll have a palette, especially if you're doing something like this, like you want to keep your palettes just so you can flat with the right colors. But typically, especially if you're painting, the palette is, I don't want to say totally useless, but it's not something that I find a lot of use for. I like to pick my colors, and I like there to be slight variations, because look, lighting is going to change. That can change the color of the whole piece. And I got to tell you, I complained about this in one of the other videos, but this sword is messing with me. Because I don't know if I should cast this light everywhere, this big gross blue light. Maybe I should just do her next. Oh, God, that character makes me angry. A sorceress shouldn't have a sword. A swordceress? Booyah! Oh, sorry. Sorry. I apologize. Alright. Where are we here? I'm going to do his face. So the light's coming over here. There's not going to be a ton of shadow. Maybe just a little bit in here. Now, if we were doing this with an airbrush, it would have a totally different look. If we were doing it with a paintbrush, we're doing it with a big flat brush, like a marker. So there's infinite variations of all of these things. this hard brush, like, it just doesn't look good if it's not nice smooth shapes to me. You can't tell. I'm not big on the lasso. I like to draw my shadows in. I don't know what I like to call people who lasso everything? Lassholes. I am full of I'm sorry. I just can't stop saying stupid things. And we're going to get some interesting colors, even though we have like just these 3 layers, that when we overlay, when we touch the shadowed parts with the hard light layer, is that what I have? It is going to create some interesting stuff. All right. I think I'm going to have to use the airbrush here. Let me think about this for a second. So that's probably going to do that, right? Yeah. And then all of this is basically going to be in shadow. That shadow is going to be way further up, though. Yeah. This is going to be a weird airbrushing. Take that. And we're going to have little highlights. Little. I can do this. I can do it freehand. I can do it smooth. This is adding a level of detail that is inconsistent with the rest of the image, and I should not be doing it, but I cannot help myself. See how that looks. That's okay. Right? Right. Alright, let's go back to the big brush. What were we using? This silhouette? I think. Okay. Shadow down here. Definitely right here. probably there. Just a little bit right here. I need nice smooth edges. Just doesn't look right without them, right? Looks kind of cartoony. It's kind of what we're going for, right? It's called Toon Shady for a reason. Is it? That's not very realistic. Well, it is a raccoon with what appears to be a shotgun. I just say raccoon. I've never said raccoon in my life. I have these neighbors. We were over for dinner the other night. And they apparently, like, so I'm sitting there eating pizza. And they're like, oh, Pogo's outside. And I'm like, oh, they have a cat or something. No. They've been feeding a possum, like a full-size monster. You know, a possum is a monster that plays dead so it can attack you, and which is kind of crazy, right? That this possum comes to their back door, and then they feed it like it's their pet, and they put like pieces of white bread in between like the crack of the door, and it just takes it real gently. It's the wildest thing. So I mean, I'm screaming like it's a monster, kill it. Like I don't. That's not cool if you ask me. I don't play possum. Probably because my dogs grab them all the time. Not all the time, but a couple times a year. And you gotta get it to get it out of its mouth, and then I have big dogs. I have a Weimaraner and a pit bull. When they get a hold of a possum, like I think it's actually dead, but because I'm stupid and it's playing possum, and then I think that I'm gonna have to shovel it out of the backyard or whatever, and then you get close to it and it freaks out and runs between your legs, and you think you have to go get rabies shots. Anyways, my neighbors, they feed these possums, and they are just a possum, and I was like, oh, that's really, really, really weird. Like I wouldn't do that in a million years. And then, like 20 minutes later, we're sitting there having a nice conversation, and all of a sudden there's an entire family of raccoons that they also feed. Which, like, it's just crazy to see these raccoons, like, sticking their little paws in between the cracked backsliding glass door and grabbing bread out of their hands and then running off. Like, I wouldn't do that. That's not the kind of dude that I am. I respect nature. The fastest hands in boxing can't compete with a squirrel. You know what I mean? Like, if a squirrel wanted to hurt you, I mean, there's no way you're going to stop it from biting you or whatever, so. That's just my take. What do I know? Crazy neighbors. Sweet people. So sweet they feed the monsters in the forest. I'm not sure what that has to do with cell shading, but I thought you guys should know. Like that. Okay, let's move on. Let's change our color here. I changed these flat, so I don't know if this is gonna... Ooh. Ooh. It's a really orange color. Let's see if I take it over here. Too white. I had him originally as kind of an orange, orange and blue, just classic complementary. And those colors, there's more pixels. this with? Oh. See that, kids? That's why I get paid the big bucks. So this is going to be this color. Ooh, do I like that? I think I do. That worked out nicely. This is kind of a fifth tone. Maybe just a little right there. Right? Probably a little of that right there. Nope, other side. Nope. This is like a personal challenge that I'm doing. I'm not changing my brush head size. Let's see how good we can be with the pressure. Because you can see I leave the size thing on and don't use a crosshair or whatever, just so you guys can see it better. Because I don't want to use the cursor like with a yellow dot that it puts on there, because I think it sort of ruins the experience. All right, let's see how this looks. We're going to do this there. Nope. Nope. A smarter man would change the brush size. But, all right. I give. Maybe we should go further up on this one and this one. We want to do something like that on the top, maybe? I'm not going to be able to see this zoomed out. I don't know why. Alright. I'm going to have to sit up straight, do this properly. Now remember, this isn't the highlight. We've got an even brighter shade. I wonder if this will work with that yellow. Maybe. Oh, I didn't put any shadows on his teeth or on his eyes. Why don't you guys tell me? If you didn't talk so much about your neighbor's raccoons. Heck. This isn't all light that we're doing here. This is also just giving his fur some color. Had you guys ever seen a raccoon before? Could really use this as the highlight. You don't necessarily need to go any brighter, but we will. Alright, I'm going to get the airbrush back out. And I'm going to go back to the shadow layer with the same color. So this is not the normal shadow color that we were using. And just give a little bit there to kind of tie that together. Just like I'm going to do it right there. Anywhere else? That. Anything else? Almost done, guys. All we got to do is do our highlights and then do these gun effects here. Whatever that's going to be. That doesn't look right. That needs to be right there. I would like to go back down to this shadow layer, grab the airbrush one last time. Where's the airbrush? Soft airbrush. And just give this a sense of shadow. Take this. Maybe that's how I'll do it. Like if I've used the tool before, we can use it in the following. You never do everything all one style, you know? Is this it? No, not the pink. This is the highlight. I should probably do this as some kind of overlay layer, but I'm not going to. I mean, it's already on top of everything, so. Actually, it doesn't look completely terrible. I'll do his teeth last. Is this any lighter than that? What is this thing? Yeah, it's lighter, not by much. Okay. Maybe more? That looks weird. Too much? Maybe. He looks silly. I wonder. That worked. Let's go back to the soft airbrush. We didn't use any texture. We haven't gotten there yet. I'm going to be totally honest. I can do without these on the halftone layer. This is what's nice about having multiple layers. Just kind of delete that real easy. So that was just a bit too much. Let's go back to the highlight, back to the airbrush, and kind of give this a little bit of light. Right. What are we missing? Some of this is a little much, but whatever. What's done is done. We're 44 minutes in. Ooh, that does not look good. Alright, let's do these eyes and these teeth and get out of here. Good. How do we want to do the teeth? We could do them as just one shadow, but they're so big and so prominent. He looks okay zoomed out. He's fun and cartoony. We could draw some teeth in here. Maybe? Let me take a look at a picture of him. See how they usually do his teeth. Like these teeth back here. You can probably just do in shadow, I would think. And this is where, with the teeth, we may have to get different colors. Should we airbrush them? probably. Alright. And then maybe the bottom. I don't know if I want to do like jagged or something like that, maybe? Maybe. Maybe even just sort of that. But I think his teeth are sharp. I doubt it. Probably that. I don't know. Maybe I can just go to halftone and grab this other color and grab the airbrush. Let's just see if we can just... That's not a good color. Let's see how it looks with this color. No. Teeth should err on the yellow side, maybe, yeah. Slightly darker. Too dark. Super zoomed out. We don't have to draw all his teeth, I don't think. I think if we just give him something like that and soften these tops just a bit, it'll probably be okay. Yeah. We could certainly go in there and draw all of his teeth, but you'd never see him. Another thing about that, just something to think about, is that when you're super zoomed in, occasionally, depending on how far out your guy is, details can not only become lost, but they can add clutter. They can mess up your image if the lines are too small. Like I definitely have, I put some white spots like in here and here that just make it look cluttered. I'm going to go back and revise probably all the characters in one shot, because I just work so much slower. I'm not totally used to working and talking at the same time. So hopefully I speed up a little bit, but with time and get better at it. I mean, I'm sure I'll get at least a little bit better at it. But I need to work zoomed in so you guys can see, if that makes sense. But it can also lead to like overdoing it, and when you add too much little detail, it can get lost. Usually in the inks, if you add too much detail, it doesn't really matter. Like the form is still there, but sometimes with the colors, it can really be problematic. So that's going to be Rocket. That's a cell shaded Rocket. Now, when you have clipped layers like this, it can be very problematic if you go to just merge them down. And sometimes, this is more of a problem in Mega Studio than it is in Photoshop. All of this works exactly the same in Photoshop, and there's hard light, screen, and multiply. All exist in Photoshop, and all work basically the same thing. Sometimes I'll try and highlight when layers are going to interact in a strange way, which is Photoshop's more consistent. But what I would do is I would merge these layers down individually. This, and then now you can see it didn't affect the image. If you try and merge them all at once, and then you don't pay attention to the image, occasionally it does strange things, and it'll flip them, it'll merge them in the wrong order or something, and then you can really create problems. Because depending on which order it does, it can make a vast difference in how your image looks. So when you're working with overlay layers, it's best to just merge them down bottom to top, one at a time, and then you don't have any problems. So let's take a look at the image and how it looks now. We've got two characters done in the simplest of styles: a cartoony Rocket Raccoon and Black Cat, the idiot throwaway character. Um, yeah, so we're going to do a blended, I call it brush and blend, which means a very smooth painted style on the Hulk. That'll be our next video. Hopefully I'll have that up tomorrow. I'm going to record it right now while I have time. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I helped you learn something about cel-shaded style. This isn't done. Remember, the colors are done. We still need to finish it. We're going to color some of the line art and probably add a little bit of an overlay and a blur to give it kind of a cartoon glow. And we'll do that all at the end so you can see what that looks like. So if you're watching this a long time from now, if it's not February 2017, fast forward to like video 19 or video 20 whenever I finish it, and then you can see me do all sorts of weird finishing effects on all of the characters. But those overlays will get in the way of me coloring other. I mean, I guess I could shut them off, but I don't want to have to chop out the inks for each one individually if I'm going to be doing a lot of holds or something. I don't know. I have a feeling something will go wrong if I try and finish these images without merging them down. So, yeah. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next video. Blend and brush is going to be the next style. That would be a lot like the Astonishing X-Men. Who did the... John Cassidy did the art, I believe. All of the art, I think, for Astonishing X-Men, which is crazy. And that very... You know what? Here, let me go... I have the... I have like my... like a bookshelf of graphic novels here, and I have this... I have the omnibus because it was the first book that I ever, the first comic book I ever bought my wife because she loves Joss Whedon and Buffy and all of that. So, and there's no way that John Cassidy did all of this, right? There has to be a colorist. Laura Martin is the colorist. And I would describe this book as being brush and blend. It's a very smooth painted style. It's a lot of gradients all over the place. And we're going to do a Hulk in this style. In the style of... I can't think of another book offhand. I mean, there's plenty of comics that are like this. So it doesn't look airbrushed. It looks painted. Painted and blended. It's much smoother. Airbrushing can be... Well, look at Black Cat here. It can be very... It's kind of harsh and very... It's a sophomoric but fun way of coloring, and it certainly suits certain books. But we're going to do something a little bit more detailed, and it'll be the first time that we get into painting and painting settings and opacity and how to blend. And I'll go over Photoshop and Manga Studio because that's where a huge difference lies. Blending in Photoshop, all these things that I've done so far, since most of you are using Photoshop, it's identical. There's not much of a difference. The main advantage if you're using these two styles from Manga Studio to Photoshop is that flatting is a lot easier in Manga Studio, in my opinion. But Photoshop just paints differently. It's where I have way more experience painting in Photoshop than in Manga Studio. In Manga Studio, most of my experience is just drawing. So we'll see how that goes. And I'll do my best to outline the differences between the two. I have a lot more experience in Photoshop than I do in Manga Studio, but I'm trying to make the switch because I think that for making comics, Manga Studio, I mean that's what it's designed to do, but the filters in Photoshop compared to Manga Studio, it's not even close. I figured I'll be finishing this image in Photoshop because Photoshop is superior in every way in that regard. So again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next episode with the Hulk. Have a good one.